Sony's PSVR 2 will finally be released here in the UK tomorrow, February the 22nd, so PlayStation 5 owners can escape the grey misery that is actual existence and instead have their fleshy bits tortured by a bloody enormous vampire lady in heart-stopping VR. Still an improvement on actual reality, to be fair. And Sony very kindly sent me this shiny white helmet a full week ahead of the official launch, so let's whip it on out the box, see exactly what you get in there, and then through the magics of video editing we can skip forward a week and see exactly what I reckon. And how does the PSVR 2 stack up to the original PSVR? And for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! So this wee box right here will cost you 529 quid. You can also buy a Call of the Mountain bundle for 569. It's a bit of a step up from standalone headsets like the MetaQuest, but still cheaper than similar premium VR headsets like the HTC Vive shenanigans. So let's have a squint inside. So this little lot right here is everything you'll find chucked inside of the PSVR 2 box. You've got, of course, one PSVR 2 helmet. You've got a pair of VR2 Sense controllers, which look rather snazzily futuristic. And you've got yourself a small bonus box of extra goodies, including the instruction manual, a USB Type-A to Type-C cable, and as there's no built-in speakers, you've also got yourself an audio headset, which can connect directly to the PSVR 2, complete with different sizes of silicon tips. And yeah, that's everything, so let's get it all set up. The actual design for the PSVR 2 hasn't changed up massively over the original PSVR, it's basically just been refined to make it even better. The new VR headset weighs about the same as the old one and the faceplate is roughly the same thickness. You even chuck it on your bonce the same way, just push this button here, that'll slide the faceplate forward. A push of the button at the back will open up the headband, then you just slip it on your mug, pull the faceplate towards you, tighten up at the back if required, job done. And unlike some VR headsets like the HTC Vives and the MetaQuest for instance, you don't actually have any built-in speakers here on the PSVR 2, but you do at least get some nifty little earphones bundled in there. The headphone jack is positioned right here on the back of the headband right next to the power cord, so all you need to do is stick the headphones in like so, and then just dangle down, ready to bung in your lug holes. Otherwise you can always chuck in your own preferred pair of earphones or headphones as long as you've got that 3.5mm connecting cable, otherwise just use Bluetooth to get connected to the PlayStation. Now thankfully setting up the PSVR 2 is a huge improvement over the original, which let's face it isn't difficult because the first PSVR was an absolute clusterfuck of wires, boxes and God knows what. So the PSVR 2 is once again permanently tethered to your PS5, but thankfully this time it is blissfully simple, just a single USB cable. No fannying about with separate input boxes or any of that jazz. As for the actual cable length, well, it's about the same as the original PSVR, so we're talking a few meters here, so if you're in a small room, you can comfortably walk to the other end of it without absolutely throttling yourself. This is it right here, just for reference. And also, there's now absolutely no need for an external camera, so you literally just have to plug it into a USB port on your PS5, chuck it on your face, switch it on, and you're good to go. So, is the PSVR 2 comfortable to wear for long periods of time? Well, it weighs about 560 grams, so certainly not one of the lighter headsets out there, but not too cumbersome either. It is quite front heavy is the thing. You've got this enormous plate right here, which is where most of the weight comes from. Nothing really around back to balance that out. However, when you secure the band around your head, that tends to hold it in place, so at least the front plate isn't resting on the bridge of your nose. There's plenty of padding around the facial area as well, and the actual band here at the back. So I gotta say, even over the course of a 2 or 3 hour session, I got, a little bit of fatigue just from wearing a VR headset for so long, but at no point did I feel like the headset itself was getting uncomfortable to wear. And there are also plenty of flappy bits surrounding the entire visor to block out any light and also the rest of the world, so you're not getting distracted in the middle of an immersive VR title when you see the cat licking itself out of the corner of your eye. And I really like how there's a button housed here on the bottom end of the PSVR 2, a quick push of that, and instead of seeing whatever game you're playing, you'll actually swap to a real life feed of what's going on around you, courtesy of that pass-through camera. So as you can see there, I'm now staring at the TV, staring at the TV, staring at the TV, going on forever and ever. And that's really handy if you are moving around, so you can see where you're actually stood if you're about to face plant the wall. You can check if your pet or your gran has just wandered in so you don't accidentally smash them in the chops. Oh! And naturally, you've got the usual built-in boundary feature as well, so when you set up your PSVR 2, you can see exactly where your walls and other obstacles are in your room. And then when you stray a little bit too close, you are given a heads up. So touch wood, I haven't fist punched a wall or tripped over a chair or anything like that just yet. And I've done all my gaming in this tiny little room here. It's literally a converted garage. And I found that that was enough space to play all of the games that I've been playing. Most of them just require you to stand in one position and kind of turn around a bit. Some of them you can just play sitting down if you want. So don't worry, you don't have to have an absolute mansion in order to actually make use of this thing. Now once you actually slap a game on, well, as far as the audio and visuals go, the PSVR 2 offers a truly outstanding and highly immersive VR experience. This is a real rival to all of the most premium VR headsets out there. You've got dual OLED displays which pump gorgeously crisp 4K HDR visuals right at your peepers. We're talking sharp contrast, punchy colours, the works. You've now got a wider 110-degree field of view compared with the first PSVR, which also helps with the immersion levels. It feels a lot less like you're peering through a window at the VR world and actually there. I had no issues with visual tearing or anything like that, even when I was whipping my head about all over the place, and those displays offer up to a 120Hz refresh on supported titles for a fluid, lifelike experience. And while you can simply bung up the volume on your telly and use that for the audio for your gaming, I would highly recommend getting a good pair of earphones on the go. The ones that are bundled are perfectly fine, to be honest. And that allows you to take full advantage of Sony's 3D Tempest audio tech, which offers a really rich surround sound experience, again, fully immersing you in whatever you're doing. The PSVR 2 headset itself boasts haptic feedback using a single internal motor, so in games like Horizon you can feel the rush of wind in your hair, providing you actually have hair, that is. And the headset also has internal eye tracking as well, so it can see exactly where you're peering at any given moment. Not that this is actually really properly used by any titles right now, but it's something that's there potentially for the future. And while all of your games are obviously running on the PS5 itself, the headset is powered by a custom MediaTek chipset, and so far I've found the performance absolutely flawless, no stuttering or juddering or anything like that. And if you owned the original PSVR controller, you'll probably remember that to actually control your games you either had to use the original DualShock controller, otherwise some of these little beauties. And frankly, I used to like the way that they glowed and turned your living room into like a mini discotheque. Would be quite good to take these to a rave actually. But apart from that, they were a bit clunky and a bit crap. But with the PSVR 2, you get a pair of fresh VR2 Sense controllers bundled in there, which look and feel a lot more modern. At first, I've got to admit, they are a bit of a head f***. The first few times I played with the PSVR 2, I spent a good few minutes just trying to work out which controller was which and how to actually grip the buggers. And yes, that was probably partly me being dense, but also partly because these things really do look like abstract art. But after a while you kind of get used to them, and they are really, really good. They feel comfortable to clutch, even for extended periods. All of the buttons are very easy to find without having to like stare at your hands, which is just as well because you've got something covering your face. The thumbsticks are like mini DualSense efforts, we'll see how they hold up over time. And the tracking reliability has been absolutely perfect. No issues with my hands suddenly, darting across the room, flying into the ceiling or anything like that. The haptics are really good as well, pretty powerful just as with the DualSense controllers. And I quite like the triggers as well. They are again pressure sensitive. I just wish they were a bit stiffer. FNAF. Unfortunately, the battery life isn't fantastic. You get around 3 hours of use before they'll need to be plugged in and recharged, which, to be fair, who wants to spend more than 3 hours VR gaming anyway? It gets a little bit pukey after about 2.5 for me. And when they do finally die on their arse, where you got USB-C ports down here on the bottom, you can just plug them into your PS5 or anywhere else really to get them charged back up again. Otherwise, if you've got a spare 40 pound on top of the 500-ish quid you've already chucked at Sony, you can get the official charging dock for these bad boys as well, which will keep your setup a bit more tidy. So that's quite a lot of waffle about the actual hardware, but what about the games you can play on this thing? Well, somewhat tragically, the PSVR 2 is not backwards compatible with the original PSVR titles, so any games you bought on there you will not be able to play on this bad boy. And yeah, frankly that does suck pretty hard, because a lot of my original PSVR titles, the likes of Astrobot and Rush of Blood, I would love to get on the go again on this thing. And as with all consoles at launch, the selection of titles you can play right now is pretty limited, but there are some good ones mixed in there. The big PSVR 2 exclusive is of course Horizon Call of the Mountain, easily the best showcase for this big white helmet that I've played so far. This casts you as a criminal type who's handed a chance at redemption when a whole bunch of robo-twats decide to kick 10 bells out of a settlement for no apparent reason. To earn your pardon for previous naughty misdeeds, you have to trek through some absolutely stunning vistas, occasionally shooting things in the face with your bow, and quite often doing a lot of climbing, which is surprisingly just as knackering in VR as it is in real life. Call of the Mountain uses all of the PSVR 2's top tech, including those haptics and even the eye tracking as well, or at least in the menus. It's more fun than a barrel of clowns, and frankly, if you buy a PSVR 2 and you don't check this one out, well, that would kind of be like going to a rave without a bucket hat, glow sticks and a pocket full of pills. And from tomorrow, the actual release date of the PSVR 2, we'll all be able to play Resident Evil Village in virtual reality. Question is, do I actually want to play Resident Evil Village in VR? After all, I burned my way through several pairs of perfectly good pants playing Resi 7 in virtual reality. I almost shut out my pancreas during the chainsaw battle. So frankly, I reckon attempting the dollhouse in VR would probably cause the rest of my internal organs to violently evacuate my body via my arsehole. And a few VR games previously released on headsets like the MetaQuest have now been enhanced for the PSVR 2, like Star Wars Tales from Galaxy's Edge, Walking Dead Saints and Sinners Retribution, you got Jurassic World Aftermath and Cities VR. I was particularly excited to see Thumper in the lineup now with 4K HDR visuals and 3D spatialized audio, so it looks and sounds absolutely lush. Going up against those mega-sized boss chaps in virtual reality is all the more intimidating. And yes, I suck just as bad at this game in VR as I did in good old regular 2D. If you fancy yourself a more relaxing experience, well, there's always Kayak VR. Put yourself in the virtual shoes of some beardy bloke called Keith who always wears shorts in winter and drinks his body weight in hemp tea every single morning, before going out for a paddle about in his trusty canoe. Those physics are unnervingly realistic, so cack-handed exercise dodgers like me will find themselves slamming into stuff just like in real life, complete with a good bit of haptic feedback of course. It is gorgeous and engrossingly atmospheric and much better than actually kayaking because you don't end up with a soggy arse. Oh, and you can also f about with a fish if you're not a fan of them. And there's loads more on the way, of course. I'm particularly excited about the new Unreal shooter based on the Dark Pictures games, kind of similar to Rush of Blood, which we had on the original. PSVR should be suitably horrific. You've also got No Man's Sky, you got Pistol Whip, which is just one of the best shooter games on the MetaQuest, so plenty of stuff to look forward to. And that right there, my lovelies, is my early review of the PSVR 2. It ain't cheap, but it is premium through and through, and if you want the best possible VR experience, you have to have a PS5 already. Well, I definitely recommend it. Of course, if you're not absolutely loaded and not in a massive rush, well, you might want to wait for some sort of deal to come along because, yes, the PSVR 2 ain't cheap and there ain't exactly many essential titles right now, so hopefully that library will expand reasonably quick. So stay tuned for my roundup of the best PSVR 2 games. I'm going to try and play as many as possible on this little bleeder, probably after MWC because things are going to get busy. But it'd be great to hear your thoughts so far on Sony's shiny white helmet right now in the comments below. Please do poke, subscribe and ding that notifications bell for more on the latest and greatest tech. And have yourselves a really wonderful rest of the week. Cheers everyone. Love you.